it is not lost on me when you see women who are in their mid to late 40s, maybe 50s, 60s. They go through, it looks like a transformation. You see them cut their hair. You see them just let the gray come through. You see them not engage in certain conversations or activities. Um, and I think a lot of it's because they are going through a transformation. And it was so interesting how in this last week, I've had a couple of conversations with women, middle-aged women, and you never know the things that people have gone through, what they're going through, and as you start to mature and you gain wisdom, I think you move differently, right? You how you show up in this world changes, your conversation changes, the things that matter changes, you know. Um, but it was interesting, the one woman, I've known her for a couple of years. Um, she does not look like me, but it was interesting. We had the opportunity to have, it was a short conversation, and when she was like dropping nuggets on me, I was like, whoa, you know. And I remember making a comment to her before. I was like, man, you seem to just coast, not coast, but like she's just kind of like, she stays so level. And when we had our conversation recently and she was breaking it down, I was literally looking at her like she was a phenomenon unto herself. When she started talking to me, now, like I said, this woman doesn't look like me, and oftentimes there's this perceived huge chasm between, you know, women of different backgrounds and races and that type of thing. But when she started talking, I was listening. And I was like, in that moment, I saw this woman, like I didn't see, I see color. I see color because, I live here in the United States. A lot of people don't want to talk about it. They're like, racism exists because you see color. I'm like, no, racism exists because of people's actions and some other things, right? Systems and everything like that. I don't think there's anything wrong with seeing color. But in that moment, I remember when I was talking with this lady, and she had my attention. And I was just sitting here thinking, like, sometimes you think you know people or you make assumptions about people, but she was just, when she was talking and I was listening, and I was like, I see now why she is, I mean, she's great, don't get me wrong, but I see now why she is the way she is. Because when you come through things, you know, you will get clarity. There's that old saying, like, when you have business of your own, when you're productive, you don't have time for the crazy. You don't have time for nonsense, right? You don't have time for bad relationships. Thank you. Thank you. You don't have time for bad relationships, right? And when you're serious about something, like it takes so much of your energy, right? Or when you're going through something, it takes so much of your energy. You're trying to navigate what you're going through. You don't have time for nonsense. You realize quickly the things that matter. So when I had this conversation with this woman, and she was telling me the things that she's dealt with, and I was, I don't, I was speechless actually, because I was like, holy cow. But if you don't talk to someone, you don't get to know them, you make a lot of assumptions about people. Oh, you're living a charmed life or something like that. She's been through it. And then I had a conversation last night with somebody. I don't really sync up with her too often, but she does look like me. And we were just talking in general about women. I guess when you evolve, okay, when you evolve. And one of the things I was mentioning to her is, I said, sometimes people, when you evolve, um, they can't. maybe they're not changing quick enough to evolve with you, right? And so what happens is there's conflict, there's angst, there's misunderstanding. I think right now, so I'm going to segue. It's going to make this more black centric, and then I'll make my comment about Jada. Um, I think with black women right now, so I was talking about the women I talked about, I was spoken with earlier this week, and then this woman last night. And, with black women, we were talking about how, like, we have had to evolve. And in that evolution, it affects many people. But when you find new purpose and you set new goals and you have new perspective, you have new responsibilities, that type of thing, you'll find that the way you move, the way you act, how you see things, how you show up in this world, um, not everybody's ready at that time, right? Like, people may not be able to move as quickly as you. Sometimes it's difficult for them to see your vision. Sometimes it's difficult just for them to understand that you need more, right? Like if someone meets you, the person you are 5, 10, 15 years ago is going to be different than the person you are in the future, right? And if people aren't changing, and it doesn't have to be exactly the same time, but they're not changing enough to evolve with you, like, it causes conflict. You know, and where am I going with this with the Jada thing? I said I wasn't going to comment on her before, but I guess I gotta eat my words. I'm gonna walk it back for a second. You know, you guys, you've seen me put out a couple of videos, and I've had my thoughts on Jada, and this is what I will say. I stand by everything I said. Um, this is a woman, I think, that has evolved too, and I want to be clear. I still think because she's part of Hollyweird that she's a little bit crazy, right? I think most of the people who are in that industry have a level of psycho in them. Um, I think it is unfair to pin the demise or the public demise of the relationship. Apparently, they're happy with the way their relationship is. I think, like I said, the only thing that I would fault Jada for, let me rephrase that. It's not the only thing. I just feel like much of what she's dealing with, she should probably keep, and she doesn't have to make public. I say this because although her and Will may be two whacked out weirdos, I think, like, they don't. Jada doesn't seem to be mindful of how this impacts her children. People are affected by her actions, not just her. I think sometimes she's thinking very, like, self-centered, but I also think right now is she's definitely gone through some sort of evolution. She's been changing. I'm not saying it's always right, but I do believe Will Smith was never a victim, or at least not in recent times. He's the volunteer. I think Will Smith has some mess about him. And so, whereas he can be really insular and keep things really internal, Jada gives me the impression she's not. She's not insular. She's got to get it out. She's got to proclaim it to the world. I think there's some sort of balance somewhere in between. I think Jada probably saw some things, dealt with some things, realized she was still in love with Tupac, all kinds of things, whatever that is, right? You change, you grow, you go through things, and you realize this. I need more than this, right? She was tethered to the golden boy, and there was something she wasn't getting in that relationship. Okay, and I know people want to look at him as like a saint, but this is a man. He's nothing more than a man. Like, I'm nothing more than a woman, right? We're all men and women, and he's flawed like the rest of us. I think it's easy for these men to want to pile on Jada And don't get me wrong, I'm not like siding with her. I think she's a little unhinged, to be honest. I mean, you've got to be unhinged when you think it's okay to engage in relations with your son's friend, right? Like there's something off there, wanting to have this so-called thing. I don't care if she was separated or not. I'm like, you know, she's got things going on. The difference between Jada and Will is that Jada's dirt is public. That's the difference. There's all kinds of speculations out there on Will Smith, and to be honest, I don't even care. To wrap this up, what I want to say is, like, when you go through like an evolution and you're changing, you know, and you'll see women start to do things where they just say F it. They cut their hair, maybe they stop dyeing their hair. Maybe you create a red table talk and you write a book and you air out all of your dirty laundry, whatever that is, right? Like, people go through things, and the things that used to matter don't matter. So maybe to Jada, I'm guessing maybe upholding this idyllic image, this notion of being like the sweetheart couple, the representation of black love, maybe that was no longer important, right? For her, maybe what was important was just trying to find that peace, trying to find her authenticity, right? I hate when people say like walking in my truth, as if like the truth is the truth, like not your truth, but the truth, right? But nevertheless, I think I'm guessing she wanted to live a more authentic life. I don't know if I would go about it this way. I do think she's one of the whacked out weirdos, but I think Will Smith is a whacked out weirdo. They sat there, they said they didn't want a divorce and all this other stuff like that, but I think Will needs to really examine some things. He needs to find a way to love himself, and I think he has to find a way to cut the cord and really just, even though they probably live two separate lives, but they're still together. They're still, you know what I mean? Like, at least on paper. He's got to find a way to get some self-esteem. He's got to find a way to reclaim his sense of pride and humanity and everything else, right? I mean, his kids are watching. Everybody's watching. All right. I don't know if that conversation made sense, but I definitely went to bed thinking about it after having the conversation last night. That's just where I'm at with it. You never know what people are going through, but when people get older, people evolve, people change. You start to see people behave in ways you're like, oh, okay, I get it. All right. I'm curious what your both thoughts are.